And
Got it.
where's the share screen?
I
Share screen.
can see it.
All right, Parshat Vayeshev, and we're on to the Joseph story, the stories of Yosef.
Make it a little bigger.
Yeah,
Thank
is
you.
that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why does it do that to me? Sorry, I'm just trying to reconfigure all the squares so I can see everyone. And it's not making it easy for me.
I can see everyone.
Yeah, no, it's just on my screen. It's not,
Yeah.
all right, we'll leave it like that. Okay, so we're in this extended, right? Many people point out that this story of Yosef and his brothers is, as far as narratives go, the longest section, the longest unit in Chumash. And I'm sure we will discuss Yosef. Actually, a little bit of housekeeping. Next week is the Shul's Hanukkah celebration on Tuesday evening. So our shir will not meet. We will, hopefully everyone will gather with us in the shul for candle lighting, some Hanukkah celebrations, and some sufganiyot. Anything else on the menu, Judy?
Chocolate gelt.
Chocolate gelt and sufganiyot.
Cheryl, anything else?
Songs and stories and songs and
Okay, so
Yeah. And drinks. There'll be plenty, hot drinks. And
Will it all be downstairs?
we don't know. If the weather's nice enough, we might have it on the deck again. If not, we'll have to be downstairs.
well, with the weather that's predicted Thursday, hopefully it's not going to extend into Tuesday.
yeah, we're gonna get snow, right?
Oh,
What I saw?
ice.
Oh, showers, yeah.
Ice, rain.
Oh, boy, all that good stuff.
That's Baltimore weather.
Yeah,
Baltimore weather. Ah. Okay.
okay, so we're not gonna focus on Yosef necessarily tonight. We're gonna really focus on the first pasuk. And a beautiful idea that is found in the Sfat Emet. And then I think once we see what the Sfat Emet says, we'll see that this idea is really present in many places. So the parsha opens, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Migurei Aviv be'eretz Canaan. Jacob was settled in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. All right, so there's a fairly well-known Rashi. It's actually not on this pasuk. He's commenting on the next pasuk, because the next pasuk says Eila Toldo Yaakov Yosef, right? That it talks about Yosef. So Rashi comments about the word Vayeshev. What's the significance of telling us that Jacob, right, with this verb yashav, to settle, Nidrash bo Vayeshev, Bikesh Yaakov leishev bishalva. Kafatz alav ragzo shel Yosef. Yaakov wanted to live in peace, right? He'd already had a lot of drama and excitement in his life. He had to run away from his brother Esav. He had to live with his uncle. He had to, right? He winds up marrying 4 women. He has at least 12 or 13 or probably more children. He has this dramatic reunification with Esav. He's ready for some peace and quiet. He wants to settle down and just live on his ancestral land. And what happens instead? Kafatz alav ragzo shel Yosef. This trouble and connection with Joseph suddenly came upon him. He has to now deal with the brothers being jealous of each other, and right, what he thinks is the unfortunate death of Yosef, his favorite son. And then Rashi continues, Tzadikim mivakshim leishev b'shalva. The righteous tzadikim want to just live in peace. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu lo dayan l'tzadikim asher metukan lahem l'olam haba, ela shemivakshim leishev b'shalva b'olam hazeh, And God says, if you're a tzaddik, you're already promised peace and tranquility and a wonderful existence in the world to come. And now you want to also have peace and quiet and tranquility in this world? Not so fast, right? It's not so easy to be a tzaddik. Right, according to this, it's Yaakov's desire to live in peace, to think that everything is now going to be smooth sailing, that might have contributed to the troubles that ensued with Joseph and the brothers, and the remainder of the narrative in Sefer Breshit. It's a really interesting Rashi. It's worth thinking about. I want to look at a different understanding, though, a different approach to this word Vayeshev, and what does it mean that Yaakov settled in the land of his ancestors. So the Sfat Emet really bases himself on the following medrash. Source number 3. Vayeshev Yaakov, Jacob dwelled. Ketiv, and right, it's the medrash, as it often does, is riffing off of psukim elsewhere in Tanakh. So we started in source 3, but let's already look down to source number 4 from the book of Isaiah. And there we read, Ani agid tzidkatecha v'masecha lo ye'olicha. I hereby pronounce judgment upon your deeds. Your assorted idols shall not avail you. V'za'akacha yatzilcha kibutzim ve'et kulam yisaruach yikachevel v'chosa bi yinchal eretz v'yirash har kadshi. So your asserted idols shall not avail you, shall not save you when you cry out. They shall all be borne off by the wind, snatched away by a breeze. But those who trust in me shall inherit the land and possess my sacred mount. Okay, so the Medrash riffing on this says, when you cry out, they will not save you. Tane, so the Medrash wants to know, so what is it, right? If Yaakov's crying out did not save him from Esav and allow him to return in peace to Eretz Yisrael, what is it that saved him and allowed him to return? Tane, kinuso v'kinus banav hitzilu miad Esav. So it wasn't the crying out to God that saved him, rather it was the kinus. What's kinus? There's a modern day use
lamenting.
Say that again.
Lamenting.
Kinos. No,
like it's a different word.
It's a different spelling. Yeah, that's with a kuf. This is with a kaf.
Oh, and the root is not the same.
The root is not the same. No.
Okay.
But good. It sounds the same.
Okay.
So when I was in
The trust
Hawaii,
Hashem.
we benefited greatly from Chabad. But sorry, that was not when I was in Hawaii. Forget the Hawaii reference. The most famous use of kinus is every year the Chabad Shluchim get together in Brooklyn, and it's called a kinus, gathering, right, where they have thousands and thousands of shluchim. And right, I've never been, I've seen videos of it. It's quite amazing. They do a roll call of all the different Chabad rabbis stationed all over the world and where they're serving. But that's called the kinus hashluchim. The gathering of the shluchim, of the messengers. Likanes, the knisa in modern Hebrew, is to enter, to gather.
Knesset.
Okay, so the coming together is how the Medrash is translated. The coming together of Jacob and his children is what saved him from Esav.
Oh.
It wasn't necessarily that it wasn't the crying out, it wasn't the tefillah, it wasn't the prayer. Rather, it was that they were able to put on a united front. They were able to be unified, and that is what the Medrash says is what allowed Yaakov to be saved from Esav and ultimately to return to the land of Canaan.
I'd just like to add, Rabbi Lisbon said this year's keynotes in New Jersey, I believe it was, I think they had something like close to 10,000 there.
A very high number, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Baruch Hashem.
And it keeps growing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Medrash is interesting. It continues riffing on this psukim from Yeshayahu. Vet kulam yisa ruach ikachevel. They shall be all be borne off by the wind, snatched away by a breeze. Zeh Esav v'alufav. So this refers to Esav, meaning that Yaakov prevails and Esav will be defeated. V'choseh bi in chal aretz. The one who trusts in me will inherit the land. Zeh Yaakov, Vayeshev Yaakov. And how do we know that? Because of Vayeshev Yaakov. Because our parsha opens with Vayeshev Yaakov. Beautiful medrash, right? Coming together, the unity of Yaakov and his children is what saved them, right? And when we could say a lot about the importance of Jewish unity and us having love and respect for our fellow Jews, and that could be beautiful. But the Sfat Emet takes it to a whole other level, I think. You'll tell me if you agree. Why is this not scrolling down?
There is one comment kind of along these lines in the Rebbe's Torah. He says that by this time, Yaakov has figured out that there's so many similarities between himself and Yosef that he sees Yosef as his spiritual heir. And that's usually a comment that's made in regard, to the next pasuk coming up. But
Yeah,
he's saying that the ease or it was a piece of mind in a way, because he saw his son as one of his sons as his spiritual heir, and yet among Leah's children he saw Yehuda emerging as a natural leader already.
yeah.
And he gave Yehuda a special cloak also in recognition of that. So it's as if he had it set in his mind that these guys were going to be, working their way up, and they'll take things over and everything's going to be all right. That kind of ease of mind.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Interesting. Okay, so the Sfat Emet quotes our medrash. I'm in source number 6 for those who printed out the sheets. The midrash bizakecha v'chulei kinuso v'kinus panav. He quotes the medrash that right, the when you cry out, your cries are of no avail. And it was the coming together of Yaakov and his children that allowed them to stand up to withstand Esav. Tihine bi Yaakov ketiv shenoldulo habanim bipadan aram. So with Yaakov, it says that we know, right, his children, with the exception of Binyamin, were all born in Padan Aram. They were born outside of the land of Israel. Ulevasof Vayeshev Yaakov. But in the end, after the children were born, they then come and they settle in the land. Esav noldulu halufim be'eretz Canaan. But with Esav, his legions were born in Canaan. V'acharkach ketiv vayelech el eretz mipnei Yaakov. And after his children, after his family is established, it says that, right, after Esav met up with Yaakov and they reconcile, that Esav goes and settles elsewhere. That's in source number 5 if you want to look at the pasuk. But Esav, right? Esav begins his family in Israel and he finishes outside of Israel, where Yaakov begins outside and finishes inside. Everything, according to the Sfat Emet, goes according to how it concludes. Doesn't matter where a person starts off in life. It doesn't matter, right, what cards you're dealt with. It matters how you play your hand. Matters where you finish things off. B'chol hakoach shel Esav, b'asher nityarei Yaakov mimenu, hakol haya v'yato b'derech kodem shechazar le'eretz Yisrael limkom shorasho. The reason Yaakov was afraid of Esav is because Yaakov had not yet returned to Eretz Yisrael. There was something about being removed from Eretz Yisrael, which the Sfat Emet says is makom shorasho, the place of his rootedness, the place of his roots. So since he was detached from his roots, that's what led to his being afraid of Esav. Achar kach, and afterwards, when he gathered himself and his children, what does it mean when he gathered them? I'm not sure how I translated the English. I might have not translated it exactly that way. Yeah, when he gathered himself and his children, meaning when he came back to Israel, when he was able to come back to the place of his roots and presumably to reconnect. So that's when Esav ran away from him. As it says, Esav went away from Yaakov, his brother. Perish Pnei. What does it mean that Esav went away from Pnei Yaakov, which literally means from the face of Yaakov? Pirosh Pnei, hu ha'ara ha'pnimiyut shenit galeh kocho shel Yaakov eish. So Pnei means that there was an enlightening, a giving off of light, an emission of the inwardness, which revealed the true strength of Yaakov, which is fire. Yaakov's true self came out and was revealed. And that was the panim, the face of Yaakov that Esav saw, that caused him to not want to be with Yaakov anymore. And this is the meaning of shall not save you when you cry out. Okay, that's how we should understand this medrash. And as is common with the Sfat Emet, he often sees the true root of things in Shabbat, in the power of Shabbos.
Oh, yeah.
Ukemo b'Shabbat, shebnei Yisrael mitachdin beraza de'echad. So just like on Shabbos, when the Jewish people are united, there's not a great way to translate this, beraza de'echad, with the secret of the one, of the unity with God. Az itpardu kol po'alei avin. Then all of the evildoers are scattered. When the Jewish people is united with its source, with its roots, so then, right, then all evil, all things standing in our way are scattered and not able to stand up to it, right? Azit pardu kol po'alei avin is, of course, from the Tehillim Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, from the song that we say especially on Shabbos. Harisha'im lahefech. The opposite is true when it comes to the wicked. Mitpardim levasof ve'eno yachol liot nishar behitachdut. Even if, like Esav, they start off in a place of unity and connectedness, in the end they'll be scattered out and they can't remain united. Ki'im kemot asher tidfenu ruach, right? Like our pasuk, like it says elsewhere in Tehillim, they're like the chaff that wind blows away. Yaakov Avinu, b'chol ta'aluchutav ad ata, hayala hamshich kol hanitzotzut shenintza'u b'Lavan uve'esav. Why did Yaakov have to leave Eretz Yisrael? Why did he have to go into this exile for 22 years, living with Lavan, being disconnected from his roots and his source? So again, it's a very common idea in Chassidut. The reason is so that he could gather up all the sparks of holiness that existed with the wicked people that he encountered. Right? So Lavan is a Rasha, Lavan is wicked, but there were sparks of holiness that Lavan had. There were sparks of holiness in Padan Aram, in the city where that Yaakov had to find and redeem and bring back, as it were. The same is true with Esav. Lachein achar shekatuv alufei Esav ketiv Vayeshev. So that's why the end of last week's parsha deals with the lineage, the descendants of Esav, right? We spoke about this in Shul this past Shabbos. And that's why immediately following the Torah's description and accounting of the descendants of Esav, we come to our parsha of Vayeshev Yaakov. And he quotes Rashi. The Rashi is in source number 7. Let's skip down and take a look at what Rashi says, and then we'll come back to finish the Sfat Emet. Achar shekatav lecha yishuvei Esav v'tototav b'derech ktsara. Right after it tells us about the lineage and the descendants of Esav in an abridged manner, we don't need to know all the details of where exactly they settled, and right, it doesn't go into the same details with Esav's descendants as it does with Yaakov's. So after it tells us about Esav, it tells us about the settlings of Yaakov. V'toldotav b'derech aruka kol gilgulei sibatam. It goes into great depth in telling us of the settling and the living of Yaakov and his descendants in a long and detailed manner. Because they are important or more important in order to go, right, to go into great length with them. Right, the same is true in other genealogy sections in the Torah, the generations between Adam and Noach. It tells us so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so. And then when we come to Noach, we go into great detail, right? We don't need to go into detail with every generation and every character, only the main characters. The same is true at the genealogy at the end of Parshat Noach. It just gives us a brief synapse, and then when we get to Avraham, we go into great detail again. And this is what the Sfat Emet is quoting. Mashal lemargalit shenafla bein hachol. It's like a jewel that falls in the sand. Adam mishamesh bachol b'chovo b'chivra ad shemotzei tamargalit. You play around, you feel around in the sand until you find the jewel. Mishematza'a hu mashlich et hatzurot miado v'notel hamargalit. And once you find the precious stone, then you discard all the other stones, all the rocks that were in your hand, and you only hold on to the jewel. Okay, so that's the analogy that Rashi gives to why we have to first read about the descendants of Esav. So back to the Sfat Emet. Right, so the after it tells us of the descendants of Esav, it tells us about Yaakov and his dwelling, similar to one who finds a precious jewel. Yaakov hevin v'ra'a shebevadai nimsa sham margalit. Yaakov understood that there was certainly a jewel to be found there. V'harbe litorach lilchom milchemet Hashem v'hotzian misham. And that there was much work and toil required in order to extract or to find the precious jewel that was the spiritual life of living in Eretz Yisrael. Vayeshev Yaakov. And that's why it says afterwards, after we learn of Esav, Vayeshev Yaakov. Okay, someone want to give their understanding of a summary of the Sfat Emet? How does he understand the gathering of Yaakov and his sons, the kinus?
Could he be saying that they are somehow united as a family?
Okay, so he's saying that they're united, but I think it's more than that they're united as a family, right? Is that they're united with their roots. They're reconnected with their roots, right? That they're able to be tapped into whatever special spiritual powers exist by having returned to Israel. So if that's the case, it's a little bit out of order, right? Because if it's really the spiritual power of the land that allows them to do this, well, that's not what allowed him to survive Esav, because he survived Esav before coming back to the land. So it's a little bit, or I guess he did cross over, but it's being back in the land and in the place where his ancestors lived. And I think that there's something deeper here. I want to look at one more passage from the Sfat Emet, and then we'll unpack it a little bit more. Unless there's any other thoughts or questions on the one we just saw.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when he says that that his wanderings, the idea was to draw out the sparks that were found by Lavan and Esav.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there was something to be found outside the land as well? Like, what's the difference between that holiness that he was gathering and then this whatever is it something?
So that is the idea of right? Different Hasidus, different Kabbalists take it differently, but the idea of Shvirat HaKelim, right? So according to the Kabbalistic understanding of how the world was created, is there were the Sfirot, there were the channels of divine, of godly energy that somehow flowed down into this world. And there was Shvirat HaKelim. At some point, the vessels were these pipes, the conduits of the divine energy were broken, and there was and so it was scattered all over the place. Tikkun olam means fixing the world, means restoring the divine energy to its proper channels. That's the Kabbalistic original understanding of Tikkun olam. Well, that's not totally true, because Tikkun olam is used in the Gemara in a different setting. But for the Kabbalistic setting, right, it's not social justice. That's a very new application and use of the term Tikkun olam. Tikkun olam means fixing the rupture that happened when these vessels were broken, when they were overcome with the divine energy. And so in order to do that, one has to find all the sparks of holiness. So some take that literally you have to go exploring the world. That's part of, we mentioned Chabad at the beginning, that's part of the idea of Chabad sending out shluchim, right? Is to find all the sparks of holiness among all the Jews. But the Rebbe was also very keen on publishing Tanya, which is the main book of Chabad, everywhere, right? I believe there was a copy of Tanya published in Antarctica he arranged for. That there's something about, having to really be in all corners of the world in order to find all the sparks and potential sparks of holiness that exist and were lost. So there is something necessary, right? It also explains quite beautifully the phenomenon of the Jewish galus, of the diaspora, that there is spiritual work to be done. It's not just about survival, but there is valuable religious spiritual work to be done throughout the world in order to then be able to return properly to Eretz Yisrael.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
may I offer just one addition to that lovely summary?
please.
Related to what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
The sparks come down because of what they call the shattering of the vessels, right? But the vessels are actually sephirot, that is attributes of Hashem. I mean, these are divine, you say the holy, because they couldn't work together. They were isolated one from the other and remained isolated from one another and couldn't figure out how to get along together. So this notion of the unity of Yaakov's family, the unity of all of us, it's something that we have to work hard on. That was exactly why the energy of Hashem overcame them.
Interesting.
They weren't working together.
They were not yet proper channels for that divine energy.
That's right.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Okay, let's go to source number 8. And it's the Sfat Emet riffing again, right, on the same medrash, right? This is very common, that the Sfat Emet is the collection of his, I don't know his drashas so much, but, over the course of a Shabbos in a Hasidic court, there would be a tish, there would be a kiddush, and on every occasion he would share some Torah thoughts. So the Sfat Emet is I don't know exactly who wrote it down, but right, it's by year, and it's whatever he shared, right? The ideas that he shared during that Shabbos over the course of whatever. So he'll often from year to year return to the same basic text, the same basic concepts, and sometimes it's even the same idea, right? So it's a big challenge that us rabbis have. Is there a shelf life for a drasha, right? To the point that no one will remember it if you recycle it, or does it have to be a new one every time? right? I'm not going to tell you my theory on that. But so apparently the Sfad Emet also he felt comfortable repeating some ideas. So anyway, let's see what he says in this one. Again, he quotes the Medrash, Vayeshev Yaakov Eretz Megarei Aviv, Medrash B'Zalkecha, Kinuso v'Kinus Banav, Hitzil Mi'ad Esav. So again, the unity of Yaakov and his children is what saved him from Esav. Emet hadavar. This is true. Ki Adam nivra ba'olam hazeh l'taken olam ha'perud. A person is created in this world in order to correct the world of separation, or the separation of the world. L'chein tzarich liot pizor hanefesh b'chol inyanei ha'olam. Beatrice, to your question, so therefore a person's soul has to be spread out, or has to have some connection with all matters of the world. Because it's only through man that the world will be fixed or redeemed. Omnam sofa tikun lo yuchal liot rak al yedei bitul hashoresh. However, in the end, the true fixing or redemption can only be by negating oneself to the true root. That is what teshuvah, repentance, is all about. What does teshuvah mean? Literally means to return. Sheshav l'shorasho, that a person returns to their roots. Umitonein al shehutzrach lihitrachik mimakom kodesh liot osek b'divarim nifradim. And the soul bemoans the fact that it was necessary to be distanced from the place of sanctity in order to be involved with these lowly, physical, right, separated, disunited matters. And through tshuva, we can correct everything. Emet hadavar, ki gam hakinus v'habitul ba al yedei yegia mikodem. And so the gathering and the nullification of the self to the true root comes through putting in very hard work. Al zene emar yagati umatzati, right? So the Gemara in Megillah says, right, if a person tells you, I didn't put in any effort and I found what I was looking for, don't believe them. They say, I didn't put in any effort, or I didn't find, right, then we could believe them. But yagati umatzati, right, if I put in effort and I found what I was looking for, then that person is to be believed. That is the work a person does during the days of the week. And through this work, you merit the true rest of Shabbos. Matana Tova, which is described as a wonderful gift. Mitziut menucha zu al yedei hayagia kodemet, right? And the finding of this rest of Shabbos is through the hard work that one puts in beforehand. Mikol Eila hadvarim haya avodat avinu Yaakov b'tzeito l'chutz la'aretz. This was the work, this was the task of Yaakov when he left Israel to go to live with Lavan. V'achar kach Vayeshev. After that, we see that he settled again in the land of Canaan. Eretz Megarei Aviv, hu habitul hashoresh. That represents that he was able to once again subjugate himself, negate himself to God, to the divine root, to his proper root. Zeshekatuv Eila Todot Yaakov, Yosef. Right, the next pasuk reads, these are the generations of Yaakov, Yosef, and it tells us about Yosef. Ki hayagia b'Torah hu b'chinat Yaakov. Right, struggling, toiling with Torah, that is what Yaakov, that's Yaakov's element, his matter. Do I have to scroll down or not? In one side, okay. V'imhu bechemet k'moshe katuv titin emet leYaakov ba'al yedei zeh lebechinat Yosef. And if a person really toils with passion, as it says, right, that Yaakov is given the attribute of truth. So if they really do it with passion and really put themselves into it, then you'll come to the level of Yosef, Shehu Akinus, which is the level of ingathering or unification. V'nikra Yosef, ki b'hitasfrut v'hitkashrut kol hakochot liot echad, nitosef koach. The reason why he's called Yosef is because of gathering together and uniting all of the disparate forces in order to become one. His strength is increased, and the vitality that comes from the life force, from God. And this is what we're able to achieve on Shabbos. So we've seen two Sfat Emets, and he's playing with this idea of the Kinus Yaakov Ubanav. Literally the gathering, the unity of Yaakov and his children. And what I think he's trying to tell us is it's not just that Yaakov and his sons were united, but that they had become whole people. They had become and discovered through the difficult process of living in Lavan, of encountering Esav, they became their true selves, their whole selves. Okay, it wasn't just that they were coming together with a sense of common destiny in the face of the danger of Esav, but it was that they were really united in purpose. They were really truly understanding who we really are. Does that make sense?
Mm. Wow.
And this idea we find actually in last week's Parsha as well, right? You can see that the Sfat Emet develops this idea in many places. So I didn't have time to translate this, but if you're able to deal with the Sfat Emet in the original, this number 9 shows a very similar idea when it comes to Sukkot. It says, Sukkot is called Chag HaAsif, the holiday of gathering, right? So we generally think it's because you gather in the crops, the harvest. It says, no, it's the person gathers in themselves, right? After going through a difficult process of tshuva, which literally can be gut-wrenching, right? You tear your soul apart as part of doing tshuva. Afterwards, you come to Sukkot, which is of putting ourselves back together again, right? Showing us to be becoming a united whole, one person with purpose, a complete expression of the self. But in last week's Parsha, we read source number 11. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem. Yaakov came Shalem, which is translated here as safe. But how do we normally translate the word Shalem?
Peace.
That's Shalom. It's the same root, not
Or
quite what Shalem is.
Complete.
Complete or whole. So Yaakov came whole or complete to the city of Shechem. This is right after, right, we read about his encounter with Esav. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us, what does it mean by Yavo Yaakov Shalem, that he came whole or complete? Amar Rav, Shalem begufo, Shalem bimamono, Shalem bitorato. Means that he was complete or whole in his body, he was whole in his money, and he was whole in his Torah. Rashi kind of explains that Gemara a little bit more. And Rashi says, we would have thought, what just happened to Yaakov before he comes to Shechem?
The encounter with Esau.
He had a wrestling match with Esau. Not with the angel, right? He had the wrestling. He encounters Esau. He has the wrestling match with the angel. And what happens in that wrestling match with the angel?
Injured.
He's injured. So we would have thought, right? He's limping now. He's hurt. He can't be whole in his body. No, he was whole in his body. How did he prepare for his encounter with Esav?
Gift.
He sent lots of gifts. So we would have thought that would have depleted the bank account. Nope, he was Shalem b'mamono. He was whole in his in his finances. And where had he spent the past 22 years? In Lavan's house. Was Lavan's house a place of Torah and of godliness?
Very hidden.
No, it was not, right? There were some sparks there maybe Yaakov had to redeem. But again, we would have thought that Yaakov would have been deficient in his Torah after spending so many years in such a harsh environment. But no, he was Shalim B'Torato also. So that's one understanding of this Gemara and Shabbos, that it's just saying that all these things, right? Maybe another way of understanding it is, yeah, he was injured. Yes, his bank account was lower than it had been before he sent all the gifts to Esav, but this was good use of the resources, right? Getting injured in this wrestling match with the angel doesn't mean that he was now disabled or he was physically disabled, but it was worth that effort, right? It was a good use of his energy, and it was worth getting that injury for. It was worth depleting his bank account in order to make peace with Esav. His Torah maybe was enriched, right, by being in a more hostile environment. That's one way of understanding it.
Shalem can mean healed also.
Shalem could mean healed, yes. Right, Rav Lichtenstein makes the point that Shalem also shows the character development of Yaakov, because when we first meet Yaakov, in source number 14, we read, Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim. He was a simple man, right? He was a perhaps naive child. He just dwelled in the tents. That's the simple understanding of that pasuk. And now, it's not the end of his life, but later on in life, he is shalem. He's not just the innocent, naive person who dwells in the tent, but he's shalem. He's a whole man. He's a whole individual. He's a whole person. He's complete, right? He's fully developed, we might say. I heard an idea from Rav Kook. I couldn't find a digitized version of the edition of Rav Kook's comments. Rav Kook says on Vayakov that Yaakov was shalem, right? In this Gemara and Shabbos, that means, says he was complete in his body, in his finances, and in his Torah. He says normally when we think of a person becoming complete, achieving all there is to achieve, right? So you could be a great doctor, but that's going to be at the expense of something else. You can be a great athlete, but if you're a great athlete, you're not going to be the PhD student, you're not going to be the award-winning author. You're not going to be, you can't excel in all areas and all disciplines in life. Rav Kook says that because Yaakov's driving purpose was Torah and a life of spirituality and God, that he was able to be fully developed in his physical prowess and in his financial capacity, both in the service of Torah. That one didn't have to take away from the other. That he was able to unify everything he did for that broader purpose. That might be the lesson that the Sfat Emet is also trying to teach us about Yaakov. And of course, if that's true for Yaakov, it's true for it's not so easy to achieve, but that's the goal and the purpose for us as well. To not, right, to be able to be complete, to be a fully developed person in all areas of life, right? That we need to know who we truly are and be able to express that. And that's what Yaakov, that's what the Medrash is telling us was the secret to Yaakov's overcoming Esav, is when he was able to fully identify who he was as a person in all areas of life, then he was able to, then that's how he was able to succeed. So I want to end with one beautiful thought. The Gemara in Pesachim is talking about Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef biyoma de atzarta amar. Avdali igla tilta. So Rav Yosef on the holiday of Atzeret, which is Shavuot, on the holiday of Shavuot, he would say, prepare for me the finest meal, right? Their idea of the finest meal is a third born calf, right? I'd probably very young, very delicious, very tender meat. Right? We might say, make me a steak, whatever. And why does he want to make a special celebration on the holiday of Shavuot? Ilo hayoma de kagarim kama Yosef ika b'shuka. Said if it weren't for this day on which the Torah was given, right, then how many Yosefs would be in the marketplace? So we really generally understand this to be that Rav Yosef distinguished himself by being a Torah scholar. He was a rabbi, he was a teacher. So if the Torah had never been given, he would have been just any other Joe Schmo walking down the street. It's only because of the Torah that he was distinguished as Rav Yosef, as someone of note. Otherwise, he would have been any other Joe, your average Joe. That's how it's generally understood. I heard a beautiful idea in the name of Rabbi Ruderman, the former Rosh Yeshiva at Ner Yisrael, who says that we should read it not as Yosef is saying, I would be any other average Joe, but he's saying, if not for the Torah, which is the unifying force, there would be many Yosefs. I would be a split personality. I wouldn't be able to realize my full potential and my full self. I would have been scattered all over the place. Torah gives us that unifying principle that allows us to be complete individuals, totally aware of who we are, fully developed in all areas of life. If it weren't for the Torah providing that mission, that guiding light, then this one person, Yosef, would have many split identities. He'd be whatever profession he was, he'd be someone who goes to the gym, he'd be someone who shows up in shul, but he wouldn't be one unified person with a sense of purpose, with a sense of self. And so that I think is the idea that it's not front and center in the Sfat Emet, but I think it's very much there where it can be teased out. And I think it's a really beautiful understanding of Yaakov and of, certainly something for us to strive for. Nothing that's easy to achieve, but something that that I think hopefully gives us some inspiration and some purpose as we move forward as well. Are there any final thoughts or questions on any of this?
I do have a thought,
Yeah.
if someone wishes to. Then how do we explain what happens within a few verses? That about, let's see, 6, 7, 8 years later after they came, the numbers happen to be in the book that I just read here. Yaakov winds up really taking a very close liking to Yosef, and that relationship messes everything up, it seems,
Right.
as far as the other brothers are concerned, and so on and so on. I would like to suggest that it has something to do with the death of Leah. Leah dies 6 years from the point that they get to the land.
Okay.
And the way, the psychology of it, the way I'm just putting this, I haven't read this anywhere. Okay, this is an idea, but I'd love to know what you think about it. When one really studies Torah, it gives a person an opportunity to explore other spiritual identities and bring them together. In other words, it's the male and female balance. So as long as he had someone like Leah in his life, admittedly, she was not his first love, but she provided some kind of steadying organization, those kinds of traits in which a whole family and a whole house can be built. And those are the sorts of things that were pulled out from underneath him very rapidly with Rachel, and then also with Leah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens when a person studies Torah, just as it gives me an opportunity to explore the male spiritual side of myself, it gives men the opportunity to explore the female side of themselves. And the Torah, after all, is a mother, and one learns another mode of relating altogether to many of the female spiritual energies. So he was whole because he still had Leah. But once she was out of the picture for him in an immediate way, he was much more vulnerable to doing things that were not necessarily wise when it came to Yosef. He spent too much time with him, and he unbalanced his family as a result. That's
Interesting. That's a really interesting thought. I'd have to spend a little time with it. You know, because yeah, it's an interesting idea. You know, we could go back to that Rashi that says, you know, maybe once Yaakov achieved this state of wholeness and understanding who he fully was, he thought that the work was done, right? And part of the lesson is no, even what, right? Or especially if you get there, that means the work has just started, and you can't rest on your laurels for what's been done already, but you have to continue to put that work in. That seems to be what Rashi is saying. What was the cause for part 2 or part 3 of the drama of Yaakov's life? But in any case, so as again, next week, there will not be a shiur. We will hopefully see everybody in shul for the Hanukkah celebration. And we will we'll touch base after that. So have a good night, and I look forward to seeing everyone over Shabbos.
Just one more point.
Oh yeah, please.
Louis Armstrong
Yeah.
had, after he was saved in a Jewish hospital with a Jewish surgeon, he was very much, he had always written a lot. He carried a electronic typewriter with him all the time. And he had a lot of experience with Jews, and he really respected Jews for many things. He goes on in this whole long chapter on Jews and Judaism, and he was very impressed with Jews that had been discriminated against, and he says as much as the blacks and so on and so forth, and they really had a struggle, but they did, and they succeeded. And I think part of his feeling is that they felt a community, that the Jews felt in a community of other
Right.
Jews.
Yep, he did. He mentions that a couple times.
Okay, yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night,
Thank
all.
Thank you,
Right.
thank you so
very
much.
All right, thank you.
And, oh,
We-